What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Home Built Workshop. Today we're working on some guitars and I'm going to show you my current process of installing frets on this Haley guitar's neck. Check it out. So I'm going to show you guys my process for installing frets. I want to be very clear in saying that there is more than one way to do this. This is just my process right now. At this time, I am continually learning and developing new processes and skills, methods for doing things. So there is a chance that I could change some of my methods. So let's jump right in. I'll show you the tools that I'm going to use and then we'll get some frets in this neck. So these are basically the tools that I'm going to use to install the frets. To begin, we got some fret wire. This is basically a medium fret wire. I'm going to use this fret wire radiuser to pre-bend a radius into these. Now this is not necessary and you can definitely make your own. This one is a purchased model, but if you want to build your own or use something different, you are more than welcome to do that. This just makes it really quick and simple. Here I have a radius gauge. This is so I can check the radius as I go, make sure everything stays in line. Of course, some fret end nippers. These are some homemade fret end files that I've made. I'll put a link down below to the video where I made these if you want to make you a set of these. Really handy. And then this is just a homemade block that I use it to stage my frets as I go. I've got this drilled for up to 3 necks at a time. We're just going to use 1 row of these as we go. And then to install the frets, I use this arbor press. This is a cheap, basically a Harbor Freight arbor press, really inexpensive, that I made a little plywood table for just to keep everything in the same level and a little bit more support. And then this is a fret pressing call. You can order these from several different retailers online. I want to show you guys just a little bit more detail on this arbor press. I've modified this one a little bit. Now you can buy some online from different guitar tool places where they've done some modifications similar to this for you. They're really expensive, but if you just go to Harbor Freight, get you a cheap arbor press. It is not going to have this spring loaded deal on here. This is just a spring that I found that fits over this, and then I put a shaft collar on the top. That actually allows it to be spring loaded, and as you press in the fret, it'll pop back up. This is just kind of my own version of it. Really inexpensive modification, but it does make a big difference. It makes this a lot easier to use, so let's jump right in and get this done.
I'll begin by securing my fret bender in the vise and then passing my fret wire through the bender to pre-bend the radius that I need. Now you don't necessarily need a bender like this, but this sure does work nice. I'll check my progress with a radius gauge as I go. I like to overbend my fret wire a little bit farther than the actual finish radius.
So right here is my 14-degree radius, and hopefully you can see what I mean by overbending that radius a little bit. If I squeeze this side, I get a gap. So it's bent just a little bit more. What that will do when you press that in place is it's actually going to have to spring the center of the fret down, which the idea is to help keep the ends of the frets from popping up. Since it's bent over, the spring of the fret wire is going to want to keep the ends of the frets in place.
Now I'll take my pre-bent piece of wire and line it up with the first fret slot. And using some fret end nippers, I'll cut them off flush. These nippers aren't much different than normal wire cutters, except for the front edge has been ground nice and flat so that it trims flush to the fretboard. And I just start working my way down the fretboard, staging each wire in my block as I go. I want to make sure I keep these in order because the sizes of the fret change as you go down the fretboard.
If you wanted to leave them in place too as you go, that's okay. Sometimes I've found though that they want to fall out of the slot as you're working and they can get mixed up. Now I like to save these little bits when I get down to the end. Sometimes these come in handy for other things like cigar box guitars, or if you want to build a diddly bow or something like that. If all you intend to do is build guitars and you don't need one that small, then really there's no sense in keeping it. But I usually try to keep a couple of these small pieces around. Now, one advantage to leaving the frets started in the slot like this is that they're all ready and you can just bam, 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 when you move over to the fret press, press these things in and it goes really fast. A disadvantage would be that if they start to fall out of there, you could get them mixed up, and it's important to keep them straight because the width of the neck varies. So you've got shorter frets down here, longer frets up here. Obviously the longer frets will work in the shorter fret slot. You'll just be able to trim off the excess, but the shorter one will not work up here. It's gonna be too short. You're gonna have to cut a new one if you happen to use the wrong one. So do your best to try to keep it straight, whatever method works for you. I have done it this way. I have also used the fret holder. They both work as long as you're able to keep track of them, but just be aware, this method here, they kind of sometimes want to fall out of there, so it can get a little bit messy if you're trying to keep things straight. On to the fret press. The fret press is an attachment that you can use inside an arbor press or even in your drill press, and it has an insert that matches the radius of the fret you're using. You can get lots of different inserts for different fretboard radiuses, whatever works for the radius you're using. This one in particular happens to be for a flat radius, but I have the 14-inch radius in here. We are ready to install these frets.
I make sure my fret press is clamped down, that way it doesn't move around as you use it. Now I'll just start at one end of the neck, very carefully line up my fret with the fret pressing caul, and then press the frets in place. Currently, I don't glue my frets in. I rely on the friction fit of the fret slot to hold the fret in place. If you want to glue yours in though, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Now what you want to be careful of is as you go, if your fret is started a little bit crooked, maybe at an angle, that could mar the sides of your fret slot, which could give you troubles along the way. So it's very important to make sure as you go that each fret is nice and straight. I usually take an extra second, double check everything as I'm lining up the fret press to make sure that it's not going to press anything crooked. This is an application where it would be nice to have this at eye level so you could stand up and not have to bend over. And that's something that I want to do at some point, but right now I just don't have the space to build a basically dedicated fret press station, which is almost what it would have to be. It would need to be tall enough to where you can see it eye level while you're standing. That way it's really easy to line up. You don't have to bend over and try to squint and see it. One of these days when I have more room, that's something I'm going to be doing. So I've got all of these installed except for the first three that I put in here. So just to show you how I would do it if I was going to stage them all ahead of time, this would be my third fret. We can just carefully get that started, and then we'll take a brass hammer and just lightly tap that into place. And that is our last fret pressed in. Now, a word of caution. The ends of these frets are ridiculously sharp, and I bleed every single time. There's a cut there, there's a cut there. These things are like razor blades when you trim them off with the fret cutters. It's so sharp, so just please use caution and know that these things can really tear you up if you're not careful. Now we need to get rid of those sharp edges and get these frets flushed up with the side of the neck. That is where our homemade fret end files come in place. We're gonna grab these and file these things nice and flat. The first file that I'm going to use is the 90-degree file, and this is going to ride along the fretboard, and it's going to file all the ends nice and flush to the edge of the fretboard. Once the ends are all flushed up, now I'm going to grab the beveled file,
And using the exact same process as the 90-degree file, we're going to file a nice clean bevel on these fret ends.
So there, I hope you guys can see there's that bevel. Now this edge is not completely final. As I get a little farther along with the finishing of this neck, I'm going to end up beveling this just a little bit with a tiny little flat file. We'll clean this up. I still have sanding and shaping to do on this neck, but right now, that is nice and smooth, and there's a bevel on either end. So this neck is ready for shaping. So guys, that is my process for installing frets. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, my processes are always changing and evolving as I learn and develop new techniques. But for right now, that's my process for installing frets. Thank you guys for watching. If you found this video helpful, hit that thumbs up button. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.